Tonya, myself, and the rest of our team, son, we was in Barbados. And, well, we was there doing a training. And we received a call. I received a call from China that there was a real deadly pandemic was breaking out in China. We didn't know nothing about it, and so they wanted to know, was there anything we could do to deal with this, slow down the progression of this virus, this pandemic. And it was all new to me, but I had worked previously on SARS that broke out in Africa, and I said, okay, I believe it's going to be something similar to that. And so when I heard that it was, COVID, SARS, I said, okay, yeah, it's basically the same thing. They just amalgamated it. And what they did, they amalgamated from the HIV virus and the common cold and replicated it to human DNA. And so anyway, what we did is we put together a antiviral program, which is very similar to what we can share here, with some modification.
Yeah.
So we'll begin, and as we can get through as much as this we can, we'll try to explain it. The time is at hand when there will be sorrow in the world that no human balm can heal. The Spirit of God is being withdrawn. Disasters by sea and by land following one another in quick succession. We know that God is going to withdraw His Spirit from the world. And then He's going to take that collection Spirit and give double amount to His people. And we know when that time comes that the world will be enlightened by that fourth angel's message that would enlighten the world. And God's people will be filled with the Spirit of God to go to and fro and to do a marvelous work that has never been duplicated. We believe we are on the verge of that.
Yes.
It's not here, but we're on the verge. Things is happening in rapid succession. It's possibly that this may be one of the woes that is preparing us for the time of trouble. We don't know, but it is definitely trouble for all of us.
So apparently, can you all hear me? Okay. Apparently, these calamities are capricious outbreaks of disorganized, unregulated forces of nature, wholly beyond the control of man. But in them all, God's purpose may be read.
Okay, now it says that the whole purpose of these calamities and pandemic is for one purpose. It is that God's purpose may be read, or may be understood. Now, it's commandment-keeping people that are following present truth. We got to know what is that being said. What is the purpose of God that may be read or may be understood? We should know it. And God is trying to reveal something to His people, to make preparation, cut loose, cut loose, cut loose. And so if we miss this, we're going to find ourselves in a bad situation.
And what you just explained is right here. It says they are among the agencies by which He seeks to arouse men and women to a sense of their danger.
So it's to arouse His people. You see, the world is in darkness, but it's to arouse His people. There's a sense of danger that is about to befall us. And we are not prepared for this. It's obvious that the church was not prepared for the COVID pandemic. And yet, the world is working exploits to accomplish its purpose. God's people are going to be faced with a major decision, and that is the time that the image beasts begin to speak. When that image beast speaks, it would be through its legislative powers enforcing the people to follow the dictate of a paper system. So, and like I said, we're missing the boat. We're going to bring this out more as we continue.
Okay, so man came from the hand of God, perfect.
Yeah, maybe moving on.
Okay, is it better?
Yes.
Is it better that way? Okay. Man came from the hand of God, perfect in every faculty of mind and body. Testing, can y'all hear me now?
That's better there. Closer to your mouth.
Yeah, now it's on the outside.
Maybe put it on the inside.
Let's try your outside voice. I don't try.
No, why don't you do it up here
Let's try
with my
this
collar?
Okay, can you hear me now? A little bit?
A little
A
better.
little bit?
If you're facing this way.
If I'm facing this way, you can't hear me.
It's a little better.
Okay, let me try to move it on
How's
Yeah,
that?
that's good.
this side. This way. Okay, how about that? Is that better? Okay. Man came from the hand of God, perfect in every faculty of mind and body, in perfect soundness, therefore in perfect health.
God had a perfect plan. He created a perfect man, a perfect environment, gave him a perfect diet. Everything about the creation of God was perfect.
Correct.
And so it was always God's purpose to maintain this perfection to the point that man would be an image, a reflection of the perfection of God.
So God endowed man with so great vital force that he has withstood the accumulation of disease brought upon the race in consequence of perverted habits, and has continued for 6,000 years. That's some great vital force he's given us.
The vital force is man's
It's important.
immune system. God has given man an immune system. He gave it to Adam. And we are living off the vital forces of Adam. It was so great that even today we stand as a testament against the many disease and sickness that we can still exist and not be extinct. And so that's the testimony of the vital force he gave to Adam.
So Adam had an innate immunity. What is that?
Yeah. Well, this is the immunity that you are born with, you create with. It's nothing that you can do with an innate. It's in you. It's part of your whole makeup. God gave man an innate immune system when man was conceived in the womb. And so he don't need nothing to activate it. He don't need anything to produce what we call phagocytosis, or produce an immune response. It's an automatic protection as long as man stay in perfect harmony with God.
So before sin, Adam had the mind of God.
He had a perfect mind, he had a perfect body, he had a perfect diet, he had a perfect environment. He was in perfect harmony with God.
So he had an active immunity.
He did. That active innate immunity protected him.
Okay.
And it was there because he was in perfect harmony with God.
So we're going to look at what happened after sin. Okay. So according to the King James Bible, it says, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, there was the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruit, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations.
Man really didn't need this until after the fall. After the fall, then man fell from grace, and everything else followed him. Man fell from perfection. So at this point, disease is taking advantage of an unprotected body. And so, but God gave man a medicine to protect him. The leaves of the tree was for man's medicine. To give you an idea, God said the life of the flesh is in the blood. That means the part of life is in the blood. That means you have diseased blood, you got a diseased life. And so the blood of the tree, of the plants, is chlorophyll. And so a smart God did a very smart thing. He took and put a natural biological transfusion in the process of eating and drinking the leaves from the tree. By consuming that, we're giving ourselves a systematic blood transfusion. And so through that, we can keep replicating life. If you didn't do that, your life would soon cease to be. And the more these phytonutrients from the leaves we eat, the more our body can keep replicating.
Okay. So the adaptive immune system targets specific threats and learns how to launch precise responses against viruses or bacteria with which the body has already come into contact.
Yeah, after the birth of man, after the
So
seed.
now we're looking at two immune systems.
Mhm.
First we saw the innate. Now we're going to see the adaptive.
Mhm.
So the innate is already in us.
Right.
So how does the adaptive work?
What the adapted is, you come in contact with foreign substances, and bacteria, and germs, and decay, and death. And so now your immune system got to adapt to that. It's got to say, well, hey, I've got to figure out a way to stop that. And it's adapting to the condition, it's adapting to the environment.
Okay.
You didn't have to do that with the innate. The adaptive immune system, it specializes.
That's why I said it targets specific threats. And then it has to learn how to launch a precise response against that threat.
The problem is, by the time it learned,
Uh-huh.
the virus could have already taken advantage of the host. And so the adaptive immune system could be slow in its response. But the innate immune system automatically,
Okay.
the minute it sees something, it don't have to take time to figure it out. It said, you are not of the body,
Mhm.
and so consequently it will reject it. The adaptive immune system got to examine it, trying to figure it out, and then come up with a mechanism to stop it.
Mhm.
And that is not as good as the innate immune system.
But the various components of the immune system work together to provide both types of protection.
Yeah, and even though the adaptive immune system is not as efficient as the innate, they do work together
Because
because
we need both
we do.
because of sin.
Right. But if we can ever stop sinning, we won't need the adaptive
That's right.
immune system.
That's right. That's right. So the respiratory tract antimicrobial defense system is a defense mechanism which relies on components of both the innate and adaptive immune systems to protect the lungs and the rest of the respiratory tract against inhaled microorganisms.
Your lungs use both. It use the innate and it use the adaptive. Automatically, your body has a mucosa that automatically will trap and try to keep microbes and bacteria from coming in. That's automatic. You have villi or hair in your nose and throughout your body to try to prevent any intrusion of
Correct.
microbes and bacteria. This is innate.
That's the innate.
But once it gets into the lungs, into the bronchial tube, then it stimulates immune response from the adaptive, adapting to a foreign protein trapped in the lungs, and now it's going to try to respond to it.
Okay. So again, we got two branches. We got the innate and the adaptive. And the innate immune system provides a general defense against common pathogens, any bacteria, virus, or other disease-causing microorganism, which is why it is also known as the non-specific immune
Yes,
system.
it do not discriminate. It's if you're not of self, then it's going to destroy it. And that's the way it was, in the wilderness when they came across the Philistines or the Hittites, and God said, utterly destroy it and get them out, and don't have no involvement with them. They was not of self.
That's right.
They was not of the body. And people said, well, what about the old innocent people?
Mm.
Well, God knew that even though they was young, they were going to grow up one day and they would destroy your children. And so God said, no, they got to go. That is the immune system, the adaptive immune system adapting to something that can harm the body.
So a baby in the womb has a pH of 9.3. Why is that baby's pH so high?
That's pretty
high.
good. That's pretty good there. Well, microbes and bacteria cannot live in a pH, alkaline pH that high. It's no way. Your pH usually run about, 7 is neutral. Anything below 7 is acidic. Anything above 7 is toward alkalinity.
So you saying God did that purposely?
Well, he did it on the innate immune system because this baby in the womb must be covered with,
It's got to be sterile,
A-
right? In a sterile environment.
that placenta. In that placenta, there's fluid around that baby, and around that fluid is a pH of 9.3. And there's nothing in this disease world can harm that baby as long as the mother remains healthy. That fluid will stop any microbes. There's no way COVID or any type can harm this child in the womb. We're going to see that more and more you're going to see why that when COVID finally hit, they weren't worried about children. They weren't worried about babies. They were worried about old people. Okay? And the reason for that is that babies, in a sense, were still operating on a lot of the innate immune protection.
So the period of teething also coincides with a reduction in immune function and a switch for our babies from passive to active immunity. So again, we're looking at innate versus adaptive immunity, correct?
Yeah, the immune system became more active because of the intrusion of bacteria and bacteria. So it's switching. It's switching from an innate immune system to more of an adaptive immune system. Be out there with me to figure out how this thing works. Okay. Okay, so it's switching from an innate, which had in the womb, and now it's switching to an adaptive because it's going to come in contact with foreign things that it's not used to.
So they're losing the antibodies from their mom, and now they're having to make antibodies themselves.
That's right. The mother, she has an immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And the baby, as long as the umbilical cord is hooked up to the mama, the baby's using the mother's immune system. But there will come a time when he would have to function on his own. And so the adaptive immune system is preparing him to develop his own immune system. By the way, it takes about 8 days before that child can develop a functional, very powerful immune response. That's why God says circumcise them about the 8th day.
So what is the difference between the active immunity and the passive immunity? What is the key difference between the two? In active immunity, a body produces its own antibodies. In passive immunity, a person receives pre-made antibodies.
He received it from his mother. So, and mother is very important because she is the one hooked up to the child. And that's where the child is getting most of his immunity. Mother is actually more important than the father at this point.
So what are some examples of passive immunity? Passive immunity antibodies given to a person to prevent disease or to treat disease after the person is exposed to an antigen. Antigen is just a foreign bacteria, right? That the body doesn't know.
That's right.
It's got to figure out what to do with it. Passive immunity is given from mother to child through the placenta before birth and through breast milk after birth. So breast milk is important.
It's vital. And if that don't happen, you really start that child off at a big disadvantage.
So it's really not getting the nutrients that it needs if the mom obviously is, her nutrients, her immune system
That's right.
is good. And it can pass nutrients to the child.
That's right.
So we saw that. Okay. So breastfeeding. This problem is particularly acute for Black women. Here we go again. What are we always on this?
I don't know what it is.
What's going on with that?
We pick on Black people so much. But I'm trying to wake us up so we can stop lagging behind.
All right. So we have the lowest breastfeeding initiation rate of all racial groups at 69.4%, compared with 85.9% of white women and 83.2% of women overall.
Why?
Again, as we talked about yesterday, socioeconomics, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And we're not being, what's the word I want to use? I can't get the word out of my mouth right now. Educated, excuse me. Thank you.
Yeah. And, like I say, for some reason that Black women, they have to go to work, or they don't have time to be there to nurse. And other reasons for that, it's...
And I was going to say, some women don't want a baby hanging on their breast.
Yeah.
Things start to sag and all of that after you have a child. And you don't really want that.
That's right.
I mean, and we're not educated to see the benefits.
The benefits is the
of it.
biggest thing.
That's it. So this lowered immune function comes at a time when they're starting to put their hands in their mouths much more and while their gums are erupting and raw. It follows then that this is a time of increased infections from upper respiratory to middle ear and urinary tract.
And this is really not a bad thing. I mean, because to go out there and play in the dirt and get dirty and put stuff in their mouth, they're really preparing their body for their adaptive immune system. If that child was kept in a sterile condition, never got dirty, never let his hands get dirty, never put things in his mouth, he'll be subject to all kinds of colds and infections and everything. So, you know, we know this because we travel around the world. We go to places we can't drink water.
Correct.
But they can drink the water.
Correct.
Their body has adapted to that, but we can't do it. And so sometimes it's good to let them go out and get dirty, mothers. I know you want to keep them clean. And so if you withdraw them from an infection, you're setting them up for a greater infection. That's what happened with COVID. And they found it out too late. They found out that by trying to protect us against COVID, set us up for more problems. And now they're saying, hey, don't wear the mask, don't have no social distance, you can just, everybody just mingle and have a good time. Well, why didn't they tell us that from the beginning?
Exactly.
It don't make sense to them. They didn't know. And they were depending on God's people to tell them. And God's people didn't know. We should have led the world in understanding how to protect ourselves.
And even if we said something that people didn't believe it.
That's true. That's true. So additionally, increased saliva could correlate to our little ones' salivary glands kicking in, as happens when they need amylase and future enzymes for the introduction of solids.
Yeah, amylase is important because it aids in the digestion of starches. So if you don't have amylase, then you won't be able to digest those starches. So that means those starches will go into your body and become an offensive protein. Offensive protein means it can cause a bad reaction. We know this from honey. We know this from other things that little children that do not have teeth. If we give them honey and other things too, they could have allergic reactions later on in life because they do not have the amylase to break the sugars down. And so consequently, that's the reason why they said don't give babies, don't give them honey.
So why does so much drool fall out of my baby's mouth and onto her shirt? Teething stimulates your baby's mouth to produce more saliva and results in excessive drooling. So it's a good thing.
It is, yeah.
Mother's milk has been reported to range from a pH of 7 to 7.4, but never to a pH of 4.5. The colostrum, or the first milk produced during the early days of lactation, is alcoholic at a pH of 7.45. Then the pH of the milk remains between 7 and 7.1 until 3 months postpartum.
Yes, and so that means that during the nursing period, that child started being fed that colostrum. And colostrum is that clear type fluid that leaves the mother's breast to prepare that child to have a more better defense mechanism.
So lactoferrin and lysamine concentrations decrease with age. So what's lactoferrin?
Lactoferrin is really high in colostrum in the mother's milk, and lysamine. That's real high in the mother's milk. But as the child ages, it decreases. And so you can see that a baby age newborn
to 10,
it drops 0 to 1%. But a child 11 to 15, it dropped 2 to 3%, and then 16 to 20, 4 to 6%. But look all the way up, when you get 50 years old, it dropped 20 to 25%. Now when it dropped, that means that you do not have that lactoferrin and lysamine to boost your immune system. You don't have it. And so you're more subject to an infection when that takes place.
So killing the coronavirus with a glycoprotein at a pH of 8.0. The virus was quite stable at a pH of 6 and 37 degrees Celsius, half-life approximately 24, but was rapidly and irreversibly inactivated by brief treatment at a pH of 8 and 37 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so in other words, if we can expose the virus to a pH of 8, then you can disarm it, you can deactivate it. But if it remains, 6 or lower, then you are going to have some problems. Okay, you understand that, because the virus cannot live in an alkaline environment. Cannot do it.
And that's kind of like just like cancers.
Yeah.
They cannot live in an alkaline environment.
That's right.
Okay. So with virus treated at a pH of 8 and 37 degrees Celsius, the amino terminal peptide E2N, or S1, was released from virons, and the remaining peptide E2C, or S2, was aggravated. Okay, so explain what
So
this
we had the virons, and so that's the virons. You're going to separate the virons from the peptides. Peptides is a protein. They're together. Every virus, like the spike protein, that's a protein, but it has a virus in it. So you got to break that virus down to kill it. In other words, you got to dissect it. And so a pH of 8 can break it down, causing the amino acid peptides to separate from the virin. And so consequently, once the virus is exposed, then the immune system sees it's a foreign object, it's a deadly force on the body, the immune system is going to attack it. But when they see the amino acid covering the virus, it don't see the virus, it see the amino acid. And the body has been programmed by God to accept the amino acids. The amino acid is the first job of your cellular system to rebuild the cell wall. That's the first thing. Your cells in your body is constantly suffering abrasions, and injuries, and damage that have to be repaired. And so the first job of the amino acid is to repair the cellular wall. I love talking about that because the reason I love talking about that is because the first job of the Israelites was to repair the wall. That was the first job, to repair the wall. And so once they did that, they can build the temple up. And so it's the same way, because you can read God in nature.
And our bodies are the temple of God.
It is the same way. So you got to separate that. As long as that virus is covered with a protein, it can ease into the body, and then once it gets inside the body, it will separate from the protein, and now it's an offensive protein.
So lysamine, as an antiviral and immune modulator, lysamine kills gram-positive bacteria through hydrolyzing the glycosidic bond between the bacterial cell wall.
Yeah, lysosine is this bond. You see that red bond right there? That connects proteins together. That makes it a more concentrated protein. What you want to do is to break that bond. The bond is like, that's the protein, and then a bond holds those together. As long as they hold together, it's like a big, strong force. But if you can break that bond, you separate them to amino acids and peptides. So what you want to do is the lysine comes in and break the bond, separating the two proteins, and that makes it easy for the body to destroy. Now, when I said that protein, I'm talking about that bacteria. These are two bacteria. This is one bacteria held together by a bond. You want to break that bond, lysine, break the bond, and in doing that, it weakens that virus.
So regarding the investigation of lysomine in lung diseases in Eastern Europe has been used successfully in combination with antibiotics to treat bronchitis and pneumonia in humans with no respiratory or systemic toxicity.
Yeah, they use the lysine to treat respiratory infections, and they see no systematic toxicity from it.
Wow. So an easily accessible and safe polyol may therefore be considered to improve stability of lactoferrin, ovotransferrin, which is white egg albumin, and following ingestion. And here it is suggested that glycerol may be a particularly stable supportive solvent for the powered sources of lactoferrin and ovotransferrin.
So what they did is they took the lactoferrin and the egg white, albumin, and they mixed it in glycerol to stabilize it so that they can make an effective
Source.
sauce out of it. And so by doing that, they could give that to a person, and that could wipe out any type of respiratory infection.
Glycerol is a low-cost, readily available, sweet-solving polyol with excellent solvent and emulsifying properties. So that's glycerin.
That's
What we're
glycerin.
talking about.
There's the glycerin.
Which is safe for ingestion and widely used in medicine applications, such as cough syrups.
Mhm.
So in view of the direct antiviral effects of lactoferrin, ovotransferrin, and lysomine against a wide range of viruses, including SARS-CoV-2 for lactoferrin, and their antimicrobial effects against a wide range of bacteria and fungi that may cause secondary infections in COVID-19 patients.
So they know that lysine and ovotransferrin, they know that it's quite effective in dealing with the COVID virus. They already know that.
Because they knew it from SARS.
They knew it from SARS, that's right. And that's what really excited me when I saw it. In SARS, they stopped by using this. And so this is nothing but amalgamation. COVID is nothing but amalgamation of SARS.
Yeah. So testing of their potential role in prevention of SARS-CoV-2 infection or prevention of severe COVID-19 is suggested.
Okay, now, before we go into this time, COVID, SARS, is a spike protein.
Correct.
And your body, it's not associated with your body. Your body recognizes it as not upset.
Correct.
Okay, so if it finds it.
If it finds it, it sees it as a foreign invader and it's going to attack it.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the closest thing we have to a spike protein is lactoferrin and ovotransferrin.
Okay.
They are very close under the microscope. The composition of both is so close that your body will attack the lactoferrin, and then if you see anything of cousin to that, it's going to attack it. That's how you make a vaccine. Okay, you make it antiviral because you want something that is so close. You don't want to make the spike protein.
Because if you made it different from the body's going to recognize it as a foreign invader.
That's right. And then by giving them the lactoferrin, then your body see that protein, your body will actually make a map of it,
Got it.
a diagram of it, and put it in its memory bank and said, if I ever find you in here again, I'm going to destroy you. So that's in the memory bank. And so now, when it's life go on, and then all of a sudden it run across the spike protein, so, oh, there you are. I remember what I did with you before, and it will attack it and destroy it. That's how all vaccines are made.
Wow. So all foods we eat are in communication with immune receptors in the digestive tract.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Now remember, now God said He gave us the leaves of the tree for the healing of the nation. Those leaves of the tree, it was for our immune system. There was no need for an immune system when God created man. The only time God gave us the leaves of the tree was after man sinned. And those leaves of the tree was to stimulate our immune system. That word stimulate is really important because, in other words, God's going to put something in the vegetables that will trigger an immune reaction, an adaptive reaction. And so whenever you take those vegetables, it's something in them different that's in fruit. And that's what the reason why it's called healing of the nation. We're going to see that.
So the COVID-19 spike protein and a potential vaccine. So SARS-CoV-2 is the virus that causes COVID-19. And its spike protein latches onto cells and forces the virus through the cell membrane.
So what this is, Tonya, see, the the amylase, the starch protein, which is a sugar, it coats and covers up the SARS protein. It's got a covering on it. Now your body is programmed to accept sugar. Everything you eat except water is converted to sugar. So there's no resistance to it when it sees sugar. And so when the SARS virus is covered with this sugar coating, it deceived the body like a Trojan horse, like a cocktail. You deceive it, making, oh, this is going to be healthy for the immune system. It's going to be healthy for the body. And so it can ease into the system through our AC2 receptacles.
So here's the question. Why would the SARS-CoV-2 virus have a sugar coating around that spike protein?
See, this virus is the man of the devil. They keep mutating to trick you. You want to think, the only thing that can figure that out is the human brain. But these viruses are very smart. They will keep mutating and keep mutating to get around that vaccine. You make a vaccine, they'll mutate. And the minute they mutate, guess what? That vaccine is useless because it's specified. The vaccine specifies. That means it's adapted.
And it takes time for the body to figure out
right.
if it's a friend or if it's a foe.
And then by the time it mutates again. So the vaccine, once you give it to a person, it'll mutate. I mean, the virus will mutate so that vaccine won't have no effect because the vaccine is a drug that's specified. I'm only going to deal with COVID, okay? And it's got a precise composition. If COVID changed just a little bit, guess what? That virus has no effect. We saw that with Delta. We saw that with Corona. We saw that with all.
So that's why they had to keep having boosters.
The booster is that missing component that vaccine didn't have. They got to put it in there so that it can identify that spike protein. So now, in order for that virus to get into the body, that's the human cell, it's got to go through these ACE2 receptacles. They're all in and out of the body, and they're there to protect the body. And so if anything try to come in, they're going to catch it and examine it and see if it's okay. If it's a sugar, a protein, it's going to open up and let it in. And this is what happened here. That is sugar coating. And now it can go through the AC receptacles into the body. Once it gets into the body, it shed the sugar coating. Now you've got an offensive protein. And that's the COVID spike protein.
So let's look at plants and their immunity.
Why do we have it, Tonya? Why did God give us plants for immunity? It's because we need an adapted immune system.
Exactly. So how do plants achieve immunity? So plants also have an immunity, just like humans have an immunity.
It may be strange, but they do.
They do. So defense without specialized immune cells. So unlike vertebrates, plants do not have an adaptive immune system.
So plants can't figure out that you're about to steal this blackberry.
Right.
They can't figure that out. They can't figure out that I got sap that's going to irritate you and give you a skin infection. They can't figure that out. So anything that try to go in and touch it that is not of self, you may break out with poison ivy, poison oak, or poison sumac. Like
latex on the fig.
That's right.
That's poisonous.
Persimmons, you eat a raw persimmon or green persimmon, your mouth twists. So these things, they said with pawpaw, that latex can irritate your mucous membrane. That is a defense mechanism saying, leave me alone. That's what it's simply saying. But it can't say that I'm only going to use this against certain things.
Right.
But, so it don't have the mind to figure all that out.
So nonetheless, plants can launch specific self-tolerant immune responses and establish an immune memory.
Yeah, it can say those thorns and say, I'm going to stick you with my blackberries. You can touch it and you break out with a rash. That is immune protection. that is there.
So, when did God give plants immunity? So plants have evolved resistance or proteins. They were given the potential to specifically recognize a large number of pathogens with similar infection strategies through a smaller number of R proteins.
Yeah, plants have a aura protein in their makeup, and so anything that don't match that is an invader, and so now and can cause the plant's going to try to resist it. They're going to say, "Hey, don't leave me alone."
So it's good for plants to have immunity, because if they didn't, then all kind of foreign substances could eat the plants, and then we wouldn't be able to have the plants for our immunity.
And there are plants that you can plant next to each other that protects each other. They will protect us against all type of pestilence and so on. So yes, plants do have an immunity, and when we consume those plants, we take on some of their immunities. And this is why when I work with people with allergies, I work with people say they can't eat tomatoes. Tomatoes make me break out and I go crazy and everything. I said, well, take a little piece, a half a teaspoon of tomato, eat it. If you don't break out, do that 3 days in a row. If you don't break out, take a tablespoon of tomatoes. If you don't break out, take 1 ounce of tomato. If you don't break out, take 2 ounces of tomato. If you break out, stop, because you're putting too much stress on your immune system. Stop and wait a few days, go back and start all over again. You want to exhaust your immune system like that.
So in other words, you got to reintroduce it back into the body so the body can eventually pick it up and start to
You got
recognize
it. See, it's the memory. It's got to build up antigens. And so once it recognizes that the tomato is not a danger, then it won't have that reaction to it. I used to be allergic to poison oak and poison ivory. I used to just smell it and I go crazy. And I read Jeffrey Klaus' book, and he said if you take a little leaf of poison oak or poison ivory, put it in your salad and eat it, that it would protect you. But he warned you could have a serious outbreak. And I did. I thought I was going to die. But today I can chew on a poison oak and poison ivory. It don't even bother me. You can do that with any type. Now, I don't advise to do it with peanuts, but just about every other thing, you can build your immune system up where your body can handle it. Anytime you have an allergic reaction, it's because you got a weak immune system.
So innate immunity refers to non-specific defense mechanisms that come into play immediately or within hours of an antigen's appearance in the body. These mechanisms include physical barriers such as skin, chemicals in the blood, and immune system cells that attack foreign cells in the body. So how does the plant immune system work? Again, plants don't have an adaptive immune system. They only have an innate one.
Similar to us.
Similar to us.
Mm-hmm.
But even their innate system is different. Instead of having cells that just do immune work, all plants have immune capabilities. They all have proteins on their surface that recognize different molecules from a variety of pathogens.
So they have a protein on their surface that if you go to test it, they said, no, you're not a me. And it can cause some kind of reaction in your body.
So how does plants protect themselves from disease? Many plants have barriers such as bark and waxy, or adaptations such as thorns and spines to protect them from pathogens.
Now, when God first made blackberries, they didn't have thorns. Okay? They didn't have it. And they didn't have that protective barrier. Adam and Eve could go and get as much blackberries as they want without sticking their fingers, all right? But sin had to make them, blackberries had to adapt to protect themselves. That's the adaptive immune system. So let's look at some of them.
All right. So some plants have thorns which keep the herbivores away from them. Some plants produce latex, by which they avoid being eaten away by herbivores. Some plants release some chemicals into the soil, which keep different microorganisms away from them. So they have different things to help to protect them.
The only time that plants is more open for attack, pestilence, And herbivores is when they are developing. When they're developing, they have that protection. Now, when they become overripe, they lose that protection. Now, that is so important to understand. When they're young, you don't have to worry about all the insects and pests messing with them. But the minute when they get old and ripe, boy, here come every insect, bug, and eat on it. That's what's happening to us. See, when we're young, we don't have to worry about so many of these diseases. We didn't have to worry about COVID. But man, by the time you get old people got to really watch out.
And that's because we have put so many toxins into our bodies, from our food to environmental toxins, that is just an overload, and now it has broken down our immunity.
It has weakened it, that's right.
It's weakened it. So poisonous foods we commonly eat. You would be surprised to learn some of the foods you eat are poisonous. They're even lurking in your everyday food supply. So we got apples, cherries, apricots. The seeds of all of these fruits are not considered edible. They're hard, bitter, and unpleasant.
Okay, so now, we know that if you eat too many apricots, seeds, or cherry seeds, it could kill you. Okay?
Apple seeds too?
Well, we're going to get to that. Grape seed, apple seed will kill you dead. All right? I know you. I eat plenty of apple seeds. Don't try not to eat 3 ounces of apple seed at one time. It would kill you deader than cyanide toxin. Okay? It is because these foods, like apricots, we know are very good for fighting cancer. It has a protein in it that stimulates your immune system to attack the cancer cells. So when we eat the apricots, we take on the immunity that's in the apricots. And the same thing with the cherry. That's why God said that the food, it should have a seed. It have to have a seed. If it don't have a seed, it do not have immunity. Because the immunity is in the seed. And so these seedless foods is nothing but a very clever trick of the devil, making you think you're eating a plant-based food, but it's a stylized junk food with no substance at all.
So apricot seeds contain a toxic chemical known as laetrile. Some companies call this compound vitamin B17. So other foods that contain amalgam, raw almonds, carrots, celery, apricots, peaches, bean sprouts, mung beans, lima beans, butter beans, nuts, and flax seeds. So you're saying these foods are dangerous? They can kill
But,
us?
you know, the Spirit of Prophet said that almond is the queen of nuts. I mean, you know, that is the best one. It's the easiest to digest. So we know how healthy it is because it's kinship to the to the apricot.
Yes.
It's first cousin to the apricot. Every time somebody gets cancer, drink carrot juice. Why are they telling you that? We know celery is good for the urinary system. We know that peaches also are very good. Flaxseed, all these are medicines.
That's correct.
And we take them for healing and for strengthening the body.
So what is laetrile? It's the immune system of the plants.
Right, and here, I won't go through all of these, but every one of these foods, especially apples and plums, have laetrile in them. And they can be quite deadly if you eat too many of the seeds. Now, eating 2 or 3 seeds, you know, and no problem. But don't try to eat 2 or 3 ounces of apple seeds, okay? It will take you out of here. Millet, we know how millet is such a wonderful grain. All of these here have hydrogen cyanide, which is a form of laetrile in them. Hydrogen cyanide break down the protein that exposed that virus. It dissolves it. And so, when you take these foods in, it's gonna decapsulate that virus, break it loose, so that your immune system can destroy it.
So do animals get COVID-19? Pets have lungs, including dogs, cats, birds, reptiles, and fish, but are immune to human viruses that cause the common cold. So though they cannot catch human colds, pets can have colds of their own, like kennel cough, dog flu, and upper respiratory infections. So that's a good point. So when COVID-19 was happening, how come they didn't get sick?
You know, Tonya, that's the thing that bugged me. I mean, I'm riding down the street and I see cows out there with snow on their back, ice on it, snowing, and it's freezing rain, and they're not sneezing and not coughing. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? I said, do God love cows and horses more than he love us? We get out there, we get a death of cold.
Right.
So I wanted to investigate what kind of protection they had. They got lungs like us. They're breathing in the same virus, but they're not getting sick.
Not like us. They're not falling dead from all these different
And so
viruses.
this is what led me on the path of trying to figure that out.
Okay. So the Komodo dragon's mouth are also teeming with more than 80 strains of bacteria, some of which cause blood poisoning or sepsis in bitten humans and animals. But the dragon itself is not affected, suggesting that they have some kind of immunity.
Yeah, he just licked his choppers on anything filthy and rotten and dead, you know, and it don't have no effect. But he just one little bite on you could kill you.
But because its saliva has a pH of 7.5 to 8.8.
Now the dead, rotten, dead tissue is acid, but the alkalinity of his saliva is stronger than the acid
Wow.
of the dead, rotten tissue. So they neutralize any virus or bacteria before it get into their system, because they have life just like us.
So, what is the pH of a dog's saliva? Of note in this respect, so the pH of a canine is 8.5, which is considerably more alkaline than that of human saliva at 6.5 to 7.5.
Basically the same thing. They
It's
have,
very high.
you notice they have a lot of saliva.
They do. So that goes with respect to the babies, and they're teething and they're drooling.
Same thing, Tony. You got it. And that's the first thing I noticed. All the saliva that the animals have, cows and horses have it, dogs have it, and I'm saying it must be something with all that drooling.
Right. Right. So the pH of cattle is 8.2.
And this is something a little different here, Tonya, but I just
So we
wanted
kind
to
of
put it in
switched
there.
it a little bit. All right. So now we're going to look at birth rates, right? And life expectancies of African. Here we go. Why didn't we put the stuff in with African American?
We got to
We're
wake
back to
us
this
up.
again.
We got to. See, the system kept us in darkness so long.
All right.
We're going to catch up
Okay,
fast.
all right. So we have a lower life expectancy at 74.8 years, whereas white people's is 78.5. We have a higher number of lower birth rates at 13.7, whereas whites is 7%, and a higher infant mortality per 1,000 births at 11.4 to, wow, that's a big disparity, to 4.9.
Yeah, it's almost 50%, but this is because of a lack of breastfeeding. And I'm trying to encourage mothers, future mothers, breastfeed your babies, you know, because you're really going to protect them in the long run.
Only if their immune system is up. So that means they've got to take care of themselves.
They sure have. We can go to it.
All right. Oh, so COVID-19 has torn through Black America. You put it in.
Well, it's the truth.
With the virus taking the lives of Black people in the U.S. at twice the rate of white Americans. So why is this? That's my question. Why is this?
Well, it's the whole thing. It's prenatal care and breastfeeding, preparing a child's immune system.
So the majority of African Americans live in 10 states. New York City and Chicago are cities with the largest Black populations. About 6 in 10 people reporting as Black or African American alone or in combination with other races resided in 10 states where nearly half the U.S. population lived last year, according to a 10th census in 2000. So New York City had the largest number of people reporting as Black with about 2.3 million, followed by Chicago at 1.1, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Houston had about 500,000 to 1 million each. So again, we're looking at these cities where black people are living.
And we're going to look at why we put that in there. You know, why is that almost 50% of black people suffer more from COVID and other related problems, and the city has a lot to do
The
with it.
city has a lot to do with it. The burden of air pollution is not evenly shared. Poor people and some racial and ethnic groups are among those who often face higher exposure to pollutants and who may experience greater responses to pollution.
Okay, so now, most of the time, your factories and a lot of your, industry is in poor areas.
And just like we were talking about last night, the same as your food sources,
Yeah.
your grocery stores. You don't have the nice grocery stores in the lower income areas. So that means that they don't really have access unless they have to travel to other parts of the city to where they can get access to better food. So many studies have explored the differences in harm from air pollution to racial or ethnic groups, and people who are in a low socioeconomic position, have less education, or live nearer to major sources of pollution, including a workshop the American Lung Association held in 2001 that focused on urban air pollution and health inequalities.
And the majority of people that, not just black, but minority
Right.
people, poor people, going to live in these city areas
That's
and
right.
exposed to most of these chemicals and toxins.
That's right. That's right. So many studies have looked at differences in the impact of air pollution on premature death. Recent studies have looked at the mortality in the Medicaid population and found that those who live in predominantly black or African American communities suffered greater risk of premature death from particle pollution than those who live in communities that are predominantly white.
So that means they already have a precondition for a respiratory infection. They already have it.
That's right.
So that when a virus comes, their body's already primed
That's right.
for it.
That's right, because the immune system is already down. So can a weakened immune system increase the risk of COVID-19 infection? A weakened immune system or other conditions such as lung disease, obesity, advanced age, diabetes, heart disease can put people at an increased risk for COVID-19.
So these risk factors,
I'll go back to that.
these risk factors of lung disease, we know that people that live in congested areas are going to have more problems with that. We know that people that are eating denatured, devitamized junk food are going to have more problem with obesity. We know that diabetes and heart disease is going to give a person more at-risk possibility. So these are the people it's going to affect the most.
That's right. And usually, the people with these diseases are usually black people. They have a higher rate. Minority people have a higher rate, especially diabetes and heart disease.
And when I say I'm talking about Latinos,
Absolutely.
and,
Absolutely.
Latin people, they're going to have more problems.
So this is where most black people live. That's
Now,
right, in the cities.
the thing is that this type of environment, breathing this every day, is terrible. But the next slide will show you the reason why white people fare a little better. It's called white flight. Have y'all ever heard of white flight?
Yes.
White flight means that you fly out of the city, go to the suburbs, outside the city, you live out there, you work in the city. These poor people can't afford to do that. They live in the city, they breathe it day and night, they play in it, but the majority of people with better income, they can go out where they got trees, and where they got flowers, and they got a garden, and they are doing better. Just that little bit makes a difference. And see, when I bring this out, people say, why you keep picking on us? Because I love you and I want to make some changes. I live way out in the boonies, you know what I mean? And when COVID hit, I didn't even know the COVID exists.
We didn't feel it.
No,
We didn't.
no problem at all.
So the pandemic's racial disparity. So again, African or Black Americans, 74. American Indian or Alaskan Native, 40.
That is death rate.
Mm-hmm. And this is per 100,000 people in the U.S. So this is right. This is a death rate. American. Oh, I said that. Hispanic or Latino 40, Asian 31, white 30, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander 29. Other was 29. So that's a big
So
difference.
we can see Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. They're more in a kind of a, out city
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah, they
They're
are.
going to do better.
Yeah.
Latinos and whites,
Mhm.
they got 40%, but
Right.
blacks is nearly twice that much.
That's a lot. So age-adjusted mortality rate. So nationwide, black people are 2 times more likely to have died as white and 2.1 times more likely to have died as Asian people when age is taken into account. Adjusted for age, the states of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Louisiana have seen the highest COVID-19 mortality rates, again per 1,000, among their black
When
residents.
age is taken into consideration, I mean, as they get older, they're going to have more problems because you remember the lactoferrin
That's
level
right.
drops as they age.
And they have all these other
At risk
toxins.
factors.
Exactly. So COVID in children in England, 251 children were admitted to ICU from March 2020 to February 2021. 1 in 50,000 chance of a child being admitted to ICU. 1 in 50,000.
That's not too bad. I mean, one is too many,
I
but
know.
that's not bad.
That's not bad at all. 25 children and young people have died as a result of COVID-19. 2 in a million absolute risk of death from COVID-19.
So why is this? I mean,
So
why
their rate is low.
2 in a million, and yet they seem to be doing a lot better during the heart of the pandemic, and yet only 2 out of a million was directly affected with the COVID. It's because of their innate influence, and that the body was still had the protection from that innate immune system. Now, in particular, pay close attention to this one, and because I'm trying to drive it home so you can really see that definitely the innate immune system play a major role, and God wants to get us back to that.
Yes.
He wants to get us back to depend on the innate immune system, and not so much on the adaptive.
So this was death rates in California. So a child between the ages of 0 and 4 years old, where they looked at about 1,300 cases, the death rate was 0.
Okay, so now that means that no death between 0 to 4 years old, and they surveyed almost 1,300 cases. There was 0 death. And they're trying to frighten you to go and vaccinate your babies, and they had no death between 0 to 4. But yet there was no mad rush to come up with a vaccine for babies. They just now start doing that when they finally get us all these old people vaccinated. Now we can focus on the children. Okay, let's continue.
So between 5 to 17 years old, the cases tripled, almost 5,000 cases, where it's still 0 deaths.
Once again, young people, 5 to 17 years old, 5,000 cases, 0 deaths.
Now let's jump down to 50 or 59 years old, where you got 18,000 cases. You got 355 deaths now. That's a lot of deaths. 60 to 64 years old, you got about 7,500 cases. You got 272 deaths. So the older you get, as we're seeing, when you get to between 75 and 79 years old, you got about 3,200 cases. You got 500 deaths. That's a 15.5% death rate.
Yeah, it looked like there's a target. These old people get on out the way.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but I'm talking about myself too. Because something don't look right there with me. All right.
So we got new death statistics released. All right, so now we're going to look at race versus underlying conditions. So hypertension, 66.4%. Diabetes, 43.
Okay, before you go
But
there,
let's go back,
go here first.
All right, so we got blacks at 70.5%, right? And this is in conditions in Louisiana. Well, the underlying condition for hypertension was 66.4%.
Yeah.
So they already had an underlying condition.
They did.
Blacks with diabetes, 43.5%. That's why their numbers are so high at 70.5%. Obesity, 24.7%. Cardiac disease, 22.7%. Congestive heart failure, 11.5%. Now we know a lot of these diseases that we're seeing, hypertension, diabetes, kidneys, congestive heart failure, a lot of that's due to the diet.
It is. Yeah.
It's the diet. We got cancer at 9.9%, asthma at 4.7%.
But all these risk factors that makes it easy for the virus to take advantage of
That's
it.
correct.
This is why God wants us to be healthy. If we are healthy and maintaining a good healthy system, we don't have to worry about this. But as long as we think we can eat and do what we want to do, then disease will take advantage of an opportunity to make you sick.
I look at the white race at 28.6. Asian is just 0.9.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're going to keep on going past this. You want to talk about the human tears?
Well, the tears really have the strongest lactoferrin of anything we have. The nose and the mouth and the tears are the three major areas that has a natural protection against intrusion of pathogens.
So let's look at starch. What's the function of starch? So the main function of starch is a way to store energy for plants. Starch is a source of sugar in an animal's diet, even in humans' diet. Animals break down starch using amylase. Humans do too, an enzyme found in saliva and the pancreas that breaks down starch to get energy.
And we talked about that.
Mm-hmm. So mucins are heavily oglycolated, added to glycoproteins that are secreted by higher organisms to protect and lubricate the mouth, tears, and nose. Mucin and mucin-like domains are also involved in modulating immune responses, inflammation, adhesion, and tumorigenesis. A glycoprotein constituent of mucus. Mucin is secreted by the salivary glands.
Glycoprotein is a compound word, means sugar and protein. Gly means sugar and protein. So it is a protein that's covered with sugar. And this is how it can deceive and get into the body. But we have mucus in our nose, secretion in our eyes, saliva, that protects us against this glycoprotein because amylase will dissolve the glycol from the protein, exposing the protein. And when that happens, your immune system can stop it from going into the body. And you
So
go
that's the
to-
process of it. So we're looking at breast milk. So though colostrum production begins as early as 16 weeks pregnant and should begin to be expressed right away after birth, it looks and compositions differ significantly from your later breast milk.
It's clear. Yes.
So colostrum is a protective force for your baby. It's considered the first immunity or vaccination that the baby receives.
So God gave your baby the first vaccination. That's why the world don't have to give your baby no vaccine. God already vaccinated them babies. If you mothers take care of yourself,
Right.
God has already protected your babies. And that's the innate immune system.
So if mothers aren't breastfeeding their babies, then they're missing out on that immunity, which can start that baby off with a weaker
That's
immunity.
That's right.
So what's the difference between prebiotics and probiotics? Well, probiotics are living strains of bacteria that add to the population of good bacteria in your digestive system.
So probiotics is nothing but tiny little microbes, bacteria that line up your gut and help you break down, different food stuff.
And prebiotics specialize plant fiber that acts as food for the good bacteria. This stimulates growth among the pre-existing good bacteria.
When we eat food high in fiber and roughage, it's pre-probiotics that actually feed the probiotics. That's why God gave us fruits, grains, and nuts, and then later vegetables. They are the prebiotics. But if you're going to eat mostly a fat diet, an animal-based diet, denatured, absent of fiber and roughage, you're not feeding your probiotics. So you may be taking probiotics, but you're not feeding them because you're not eating enough fruits, grains, and nuts and vegetables.
So antibodies are made by the mom when she comes into contact with bacteria. Antibodies fight off the bacteria and also go into her breast milk to help her protect the baby.
Yeah, when the mother, she's getting exposed to things,
Correct.
contaminants. And so she really helping her baby out because her immune system figure out how to protect it. That's passed on to the baby. And so that's the adapted immune system.
So how do we protect our child in school? So if people would encourage the church, in which they are members, to establish small, humble school buildings in which to do service for God, they would accommodate their own children within their borders.
These large gatherings are dangerous. So it is infested with a lot of disease and stuff. So, but the small school would be better protected against reinfection.
Children would.
They found out that a lot of families got infected by the children, and the children became carriers of the virus. They would bring it home and give it to mom and dad. It wouldn't bother them. You're going to see that in a little bit. And they get a little sniffles, a little runny nose. But then they give that to the mom and dad, which that
Their immune system is weakened, and then they get sick.
right.
So,
Now this is one here that makes this clear here
okay.
of what I was trying to explain to you.
So high viral RNA loads may indicate greater infectiousness. And because children tend to have mild or no symptoms when infected with these viruses, and many symptoms overlap with common childhood diseases, such as the flu and the common cold, they could spread the virus.
Yeah, high viral load means that your viral count is real high, which should say that you've got big problems. These children can have a high viral load and it don't bother them. And the reason it don't bother them because they get flus, they get common colds, they get sniffles,
All the time.
and all of those viruses are cousins to the COVID virus. So the same immune system that stopped the common cold with a child, guess what it's going to do with COVID? It's going to stop it. So they already have a protection against COVID because they've been exposed to all these similar COVID. COVID is a whole line of different viruses. It's not just one spike protein. All the colds and flus are spiked by COVID virus.
So in a Massachusetts General Hospital news release, Arthur Yonker said she was surprised by the study findings. You think of a hospital and of all of the precautions taken to treat severely ill adults.
Right there.
Okay.
She observed that a hospital that is set up to protect people, but they treat severely ill, grown people.
Okay.
Now watch what happened.
But the viral loads of these hospitalized patients are significantly lower than a healthy child.
So in the hospital, the viral load for these severely ill people is lower than in a healthy child. Do y'all understand that?
And on top of that, a healthy child that's walking around with a high SARS-CoV-2 viral load.
So this child here got a higher COVID viral load.
Right.
He walking around playing,
And he fine.
having himself a good time, blowing his nose and sniffing, got a fever. He ain't bothered with it. But they in the hospital where their
Right.
viral load is lower, but they are fighting for their life.
That's right.
We can go to the next one. And this was just showing that these glycoprotein, that covers the spike protein. Okay, I'll
right.
get to soon. Satan has come down in these last days to work all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish. Satan is the master deceiver. His satanic majesty worked miracles in the sight of false prophets and in the sight of men, claiming that he is indeed Christ himself. He want to masquerade himself as Christ. He want to come on the scene as a great benefactor, a great healer of mankind. And through these systems, he'll be able to deceive man. Satan gives his power to those who are aiding him in his deception. He's going to give it to the system. He's going to come on as a great benefactor, great healer. He's going to give those powers to the system that do not believe in God, and the system they get up, they create, have nothing to do with God. Therefore, those who claim to have the great power of God can only be discerned by the great detector. So if you don't know God, you don't know his standard, you won't be able to detect his law or the law of Jehovah. You won't be able to do it. The Lord tells us, if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. And the whole world has been deceived by these deceivers that have used Satan's system to deceive them. Now listen, the crowning act in the great drama of deception. The sheep clothing seems so real, so genuine, that the wolf cannot be discerned. Only as we go to God's great moral standard and there find that they are transgressors of the law of Jehovah. So we're dependent on people that do not respect and love the law of God to lead us in a better, safe environment, protect us, and we're dependent on them to heal us when God has a healing system that we have turned our back on. Healing is by one or two powers. And this is because we don't know the law of God. Not only God, but also Satan can heal miraculously. Fearful sights of supernatural character will soon be revealed in the heavens in the token of the power of miracle-working demons. We're in that time. As the crowning act in a great drama of deception, Satan will manifest himself among men as a majestic being of dazzling brightness, resembling the description of the Son of God given by John in the Revelation. So Satan's going to come on to try to help us get through this crisis. And we should be dependent on direction from God's church. But our church is asleep. He healed the disease of the people. And then his assuming character of Christ, he claimed to have changed the Sabbath to Sunday. Now, hold that right there, Sister Grant. Now, you notice how he's going to get Seventh-day Adventists to keep Sunday? He's going to use medicine.
The diseases of the people.
Now, that's from Great Controversy, page 624.
Right.
He's going to use the health word to do that. And we're looking at the paper system. Well, the paper system, the Pope over there, he's going to enforce Sunday on everybody. That man ain't bothered about y'all. He got his hand folded. He said, I got my little boy called that image beast over there in North America. He said, now you go do my dirty work for me. And so he healed the disease of the people. When a pandemic comes, he's going to heal you. He's going to tell you, shut your churches down, wear that mask, protect yourself, isolate yourself. Then he's going to think, well, that ain't working. We're going to switch that. He claimed to have changed the Sabbath to Sunday. And through that, he'll be able to what? Deceive God's people. We are to be on guard against Satan's deceptive arts. He will take possession of human bodies, make men and women sick, and I believe he's done that. Then he will suddenly cease to exercise his evil power, and he withdrew that pandemic by coming up with coronavirus. The coronavirus was the antidote to COVID-19. All of a sudden when Corona came, things got better. They never created a drug without an antidote. Because that Corona was getting out of control. So they had to what? Release the coronavirus, which when the coronavirus came, it neutralized COVID-19. Now all of a sudden you don't hear about COVID-19, it's the coronavirus. They're using medicine to do that. Then he will suddenly seek to exercise his evil power, and it will be proclaimed that a miracle has been wrought, and he'll be able to deceive God's people. Read that time.
Okay. So Satan, will make people sick, and then will suddenly remove from them his satanic power. They will then be regarded as healed. These works of apparent healing will bring Seventh-day Adventists to the test.
Did y'all get that, brothers and sisters? These apparent healing will bring who? Seventh-day Adventists to the test. It didn't say in Sunday law would do it. It did not say the son-in-law. Now the son-in-law is coming right behind it. But the image of the beast already set you up for the son-in-law. It's already told the world that you will do whatever it takes to live. When he seen that he could shut your churches down, he said, we got it. All we got to do is scare them half to death. They'll do whatever they want. They'll stop keeping the Sabbath. They'll do whatever they can to live.
But with that statement where it says these works of apparent healing will bring Seventh-day Adventists to the test, we could see that why the medical missionary work is so important.
And I'm so happy you brought that out because, you see, the medical missionary was an added appendix until COVID came.
That's right.
Well, when
That's right.
COVID came, they
That's
started looking for medical missionary. Where is those quacks that got urban medicine? All of a sudden now everybody's concerned about medical missionary work. The doors were wide open for us to go and teach because there was no solution in the church. But the medical work, it's time now that we come to the aid.
And that's why you can also see in the spirit of prophecy where she says that it will be the last work.
It will.
It will be.
Yeah, you can go ahead on. We're going to speed on up here.
5:30.
And this is just talking about the covering on the spike protein. So we've already covered that. And while she's going, we're going to go toward the, how much more time do we have?
About 30 minutes.
Okay, just go on to the treatment part of it.
Okay.
So what we're saying is that since a lot of us have missed out on protecting ourselves because our mother probably didn't follow the guidelines, we now going to have to do double the work to try to get our bodies back protected.
You want to talk about the cytokines from the vaccine?
We can talk a little bit about
Let's
cytokines.
talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. So, in some case, the vaccine can cause cytokines. Those with severe disease experience an uncontrolled inflammatory response, a cytokine storm, that may lead to acute respiratory distress syndrome, or it's characterized by widespread inflammation in the lungs. And we saw that a lot. We saw that a lot. People were calling us after COVID-19, and some people did and some people didn't get the vaccine, but definitely the ones that got the vaccine. And they were having all of these kind of respiratory problems and things were just going on. The whole body chemistry was off. Everything was out of balance. And they were like, what is going on? They couldn't understand it.
Yeah, you can get cytokine storms from the vaccine, and you can get it from just getting the cold.
Yeah, that's right.
But
We saw it on both.
that's not, see, it's a people misunderstand the cytokine storm. You can get a thyroid storm.
Okay.
You can get many different storms. That simply means that your immune system is overreacting to an offensive protein. So when you take in that spike protein into your lungs, then your body will try to get rid of it. It will send a very powerful force of immune response to the lungs to try to get that spike protein out. And it comes in with the tank brigade and the bazookas and the Air Force, and they try to bomb it out. It creates a lot of collateral damage, and that creates inflammation in the lungs.
That's it. And it's uncontrolled inflammation. Because inflammation is good up to a certain point.
Right.
It's when it gets out of hand is when you have the issues.
So we need cytokine
We do.
storm, but like you said, when it get out of control, because it's just your immune system overreacting.
Right.
So don't look at that as a bad thing. And so here we see that the esophagus, the stomach, the bowels, the kidneys, the brain, all of these here are where
And see how it's causing different cytokine storms
Mhm.
within the body.
Yes. And so it can affect any organ in the body. It's not just your lungs.
Wow.
And once again, here we're looking at the 7 defense barriers. You have principally 7 defense barriers to protect us against viruses and pathogens. And you have your tears in your eyes, which is very high in lycosine. Your mouth have it also, and your nose. Those are the three principal areas where the virus want to come in at. That's why you wear a mask, because if it get in your nose, it can go to your brain, and then if it get in your mouth, it can end up causing reaction in your stomach, your gut, your brain, and the rest of your body. So this is why these 7 defense mechanisms, we have to protect them. You can go ahead. We're going to go on to deal with the treatments. This is talking about it. Okay.
No lysine, let's talk about it. So a healthy, balanced immune system is one that is able to quickly and effectively fight off infection and at the same time not overreact to irritations such as allergens or even your own body. Having the necessary nutrient reserves and avoiding foods and chemicals that suppress the immune system will support continued good health.
Yeah, and that keep it, your immune system optimal so it won't overreact.
And this was done by Paula Gallagher that looked at L-lysine.
Mm-hmm.
So L-lysine is an essential amino acid that cannot be produced by the body. Lysine helps strengthen the immune system by adjusting body chemistry so it is less welcoming, hospitable to foreign organisms and supports the body's acid-alkaline balance.
Lysine is an amino acid. It's a protein. So if you have herpes, you simply can paint lysine over a herpes outbreak and it clear it up because it's a protein. That herpes is a protein infection. And so when you paint the lysine on it, guess what? Your immune system recognizes the lysine, it attacked the lysine, and in attacking the lysine, which is an amino acid, it attacked any other associated protein similar to that. That's why lysine works so well.
So lysine has been shown to prevent outbreaks and reduce the duration and severity of, like you just said, individual herpes and other viral infections. So how do viruses mutate?
Well, we're not going to go through this one. We don't have time to go through this one, but in here it just tells you how when viruses mutate, they have to have, boosters. And the boosters is to try to add to the vaccine and take up what the vaccine missed. And how they created and released the coronavirus to neutralize COVID-19. So we're not going to.
Trying to get to
The one that they said modified. Let me go back on it. Okay, you can read this.
Okay, so viruses have been detrimental to humans due to the nature of the diseases they cause. However, now modified viruses can help in curing dangerous illnesses.
What do you mean modified?
I know, there's some change to it.
We're in an age of genetic engineering. They modifying everything. So now they're going to modify a bad virus to make it fight.
And curing a dangerous illness.
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
So, was SARS-CoV-2 a modified virus created to help in curing dangerous viruses like HIV, the common cold, and the flu? It's a possibility. So, since the dawn of time, viruses have been very detrimental to humans due to the nature, again, of the diseases they cause. So, however, now thanks to advances in science, modified viruses can help in preventing and curing dangerous illnesses.
All I ask you to do is check it out. Go to Mr. Google because he knows everything, and ask him what about these modified viruses to fight COVID. Okay, because I'm not making this stuff up. This is medical science. They created virus to fight the deadly virus. Okay, you can just go right on as soon as that goes through. You can read that.
Okay, so this doctor talks about how he uses viruses to fight disease. So we got one of these experts, Sam Stevens, takes us through his insights on how viruses are a key part of the fight against viruses. So viruses are microscopic super parasites. They tend to have very little means to survive by themselves, instead relying on their host to provide the main means of survival. Some, like very bad guests who trash up their residence, destroy their host cells as they try to find more hapless host.
Yeah.
So we